As with all my board gaming vlogs, I try to answer that critical gaming question. What place will this game have in your collection, and how much, realistically, how much table time is it going to see? So for this podcast, we're going to look at Aliens versus Predator, The Hunt Begins. A very, very unique title, a somewhat confusing title, and a couple of options based on the edition that you're looking to acquire. It's no secret that I'm a massive AVP fan. I love the Alien franchise. I love the Predators. I love the video games out there. So the chance to play this, to step into this narrative in a board gaming environment, to play the Aliens, to play the Colonial Marines, to play the Predators, I was really, really excited about it. So the first edition is a little bit interesting by Protos because is it a board game? Is it a miniatures-based game? And you need some modeling skills right out of the box. So it's a little bit confusing because one could say it's a war game or a board game. And we'll look at the rules narrative in a second. The first edition production quality is pretty good. The cardboard for the boards are good. The dice are good. The cards are good on there. The tokens utilized are extremely weak, extremely small. And we'll talk a little bit about how they function and the functionality of them, but they're a little bit disappointing. The miniatures themselves are absolutely fantastic. They're kind of this plastic resin type miniatures. Amazing detail, some dynamic poses, but you're going to have to build and possibly paint them yourselves. Depends on where you are with the hobby. There's additional expansions released, additional Alien Warriors, the Power Loader, more Colonial Marines, synthetics, of course the Alien Queen herself, that can be incorporated into the game. There's also separately optional rules out there that would allow you to play it outside of the board game in a more traditional wargaming format. This first edition is a little bit more challenging, a little bit more difficult to find, but on the secondary market or used, it's out there. Now second edition rolls around, and second edition is looking to reduce the footprint, change the models, and up the production quality. If I had the choice, I'm owning both the first edition and the second edition. I mean, I did mention I was a fan of the franchise. I prefer the second edition. It's a much more compact box. The miniatures are color-coded for each faction. The poses are a little bit more compact, a little bit smaller, but much more dynamic. And they're unicast, which means just essentially you pull them out and you play. It's what you'd think of as a board gaming type miniature. So in the game, it's a 3-player game. It could play as a 2-player game. And there are additional rules for kind of an AI free-for-all, one player against the aliens. Those rules are a little bit weak, a little bit simplistic. I won't say they were an afterthought in the original game, but it is a welcome feature for when you either want to learn the rules or you just want to survive a bug hunt or an all-out assault by the aliens and you want to play the Colonial Marines. The unique thing about the game, and I understand what they were trying to do in the rules, but for me it really fell flat. And I'm not one to house rule things, but I think this is something that's worth house ruling. If you've seen the movies, there's this idea of the motion trackers. So you're on, essentially the narrative of the game is you're on this spaceship full of aliens. The Colonial Marines awaken. Things as always have gone wrong, and you're trying to escape the ship. The aliens are just trying to take over and slaughter everything. And as a result, of course, the Predators, they dock with one of their ships and their hunters come on board to try and take some trophies. You have the idea of the motion tracker where as you move your aliens, as you move your Colonial Marines around, initially they're represented by tokens. And the token just represents a blip point. We've seen this in other games. A great example of it would be Space Hulk, where you have gene stealers, essentially kind of alien clones. When they're out of sight, you mark it with a token, and that token could represent 1, 2, or 3 gene stealers. So for the person playing the other side, you know something's around that corner, but you don't quite know what. AVP does the same thing. So as a Colonial Marine player with the motion tracker, Around the corner, there's going to be 2 alien blips, 2 alien tokens. Is it a runner? Is it a warrior? Is it a queen? I really don't know. I know something's there, but I don't know what. When the alien player moves into line of sight of a predator or a colonial marine, then you remove the token and you place the corresponding model down. This also gets interesting, a little bit more dynamic as the alien player. You have similar blip tokens for the colonial marines, and that kind of represents the aliens, their sense, kind of seeing what's going on, knowing what's going on. So I can be moving up with a bunch of my warriors. Of course, we haven't had line of sight yet, so I'm marking them with my blip tokens. And around the corner is a marine blip token. Is it a flamethrower? I hope not. I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. Is it a smart gunner? Is it one of the turrets? We really don't know until things are revealed. That sounds really intriguing. And it is, and it works well in theory. But what happens is a good 70 or 80% of the game is just played with these blips on the map. By the time you come into line of sight contact, you flip over, you replace your aliens, you put the colonial marines model down, you put the predator models down, and the action is very, very intense. Things die, explode, get killed, get taken off the board very fast, only to spawn more in the case of the aliens. So you remove them, and then we're back to the tokens. So you have this pile of amazing visuals, this pile of amazing miniatures that are out there in the game, but they spend more time off the board than on the board. That is my primary criticism of the game in its current incarnation. Now, there's some other effects that are interesting and kind of spice things up, but I find them easy to forget. There's this idea that the spaceship where all this is taking place has suffered tremendous damage. So the environmental controls, the navigation, various systems are failing. So as you move through the corridors of the spaceship and the various pieces of it, at the beginning of every turn, you flip over this environmental card. And it could slow down movement, problem with the gravity fields. It could represent an electrical fire, lights blink out, all sorts of area effects, which increases replayability, right? It adds another condition on there. So if you're playing the same missions over and over and over again, okay, replayability. It also forces tactical flexibility. So you're moving up, you have a plan, and at the beginning of the turn, you're ready to execute that plan. You flip over an environmental card, and all the doors close, right? Emergency seal the hatches, and now you're like, wait, what am I going to do? And maybe you're trapped in here with some aliens. So it's kind of unique, but the cards are easy to forget in terms of flipping them or in terms of executing them, because it's a 3-player turn, ideally. And again, you can play the game one person solo. You can play it 2 versus 2. It really shines playing a 3-player game because every faction is out for themselves, and sometimes it's in the best interest with the Predators to team up with the Colonial Marines. So it's encouraged to play 3 factions, 3 sides. But what happens is, through the action of the game in the various phases, you might forget. Combat actions, it's a D20 system with certain modifiers. Nothing revolutionary, nothing groundbreaking, but a solid system that's on there. So ultimately, the visuals are amazing. The factions all play vastly different. The aliens are overwhelming. They're expendable. You get multiple waves of aliens. I actually love playing the aliens because they have some unique rules true to the movies and the franchise. You get an alien in there, and if the Colonial Marines don't have a flamethrower, if they hit you with a pistol, or if they hit you with one of the pulse rifles, you're literally just going to explode like a watermelon, and you're going to acid spray everything in one of those spaces. If it's occupied by Colonial Marines, they can get washed by the acid, just like in the movies. So you see this kind of like the hive mind, the presence of the queen. You as a player, you're pushing those aliens forward, where it's like, look, I'm going to push 5 of my warriors forward, but I just need to get one of them in there. And, of course, in the assault and the close combat, the aliens are brutal. Colonial Marines are right as you expect, in the middle. Their stats are okay. They're not as fast as the aliens. They've got some armor. They've got some tech. They're very, very flexible. And, of course, the hunters, the predators, they're the absolute strongest. They have the most amazing tech. You know, they've got the disc, they've got the spear, they've got the net gun, they've got the plasma caster, all the stuff that you would expect, but you don't have the numbers. So you really can't be everywhere at once. And the missions are very tactical. Some of them are just run and gun, blow stuff up. But some of them are achieve multiple mission goals and occupy multiple points. The Predators there are at a tremendous disadvantage. So the factions play all different. The balance, once you understand tactically how they operate, is there. And the tiles look fantastic. Cards are fantastic. Production value fantastic. But you're back to these little blip tokens and a system that captures the suspense, but the miniatures spend more time off the board than on the board. Another consideration, picking up the game, utilizing the miniature as the game, but now you have a really sweet set, whether it's first edition with some of the expansions or the second edition. Now you have a really sweet set of miniatures that can work in an aliens-based war game at a really, really cool scale. So you have the option for two ways of utilizing the miniatures, two ways of utilizing the sets. Some very, very interesting, unique stuff. That alone might be worth the price of admission.